Hello, Augies Worldwide. I'm Dave Kassler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another episode of Ask Dave. Today we're going to look at something that I've wanted to have for years and finally took the time to get, not this year, but last year at Aidan. And it is an object that was created by what is the oldest name in ham radio. Now, the company's been taken over by Scott Robbins, who used to be one of the principals at Tentec. And he's pulling in a lot of these old names of companies in under the Vibroplex label. And they are making these here in the USA. The Vibroplex has quite a variety of Morse code keys. And the one that is most famous is I think they call it the Racer or something like that. Anyway, last year at Dayton, on the last day, I finally was overcome by temptation, and I went to the Vibroplex booth and purchased an original, quote unquote, an original Vibroplex. It's, of course, a modern build, but it matches the original in every respect that they are able to do it. It's actually quite an ingenious little device, and it makes use of mechanical resonance and mechanical impedances and so on. Very, very, very interesting, and I'll show you that. Now, will I ever learn to use a bug? That's the shorthand for these devices. I don't know. I've tried it. I'm so used to using paddles that that's just second nature to me now. But it is a gorgeous device, and we'll get to see that in just a moment. So what we're going to do is take a look at the Vibroplex, and I'm going to point out some of the interesting features that talk about how it works. Now, and this is important, I'm showing you the Vibroplex original. Okay, and we're going to talk about it. But a future video is coming up where we're going to talk about the inventor of the Vibroplex, how he did it, what he did, and so on. I've pulled 3 of 4 of his patents, and we'll look at his thought process as we go through this. He didn't start with this mechanical device. He started with an electromechanical device because he couldn't solve his physical problems just using the solid equivalence of resistance, impedance, and so on. We'll find out more about this, but that is a video coming up. Before we jump in, I want to say a special thank you to Andrew Warfield, who is one of my latest patrons on Patreon.com. You too can become a patron by going to patreon.com/KE0OG. And let's jump in. The Vibroplex comes packaged in a very strong box, and there is a list of things to do if something comes loose in shipping. It's actually a fairly sensitive device. There is a wonderful, absolutely wonderful exploded parts diagram here, okay, for the Vibroplex. And there is information in here from an ancient QST article on how to properly set up the Vibroplex to your liking. And then notice this, you can buy any part of the Vibroplex, okay, any part. And that's the thing about Vibroplex, it's just eminently maintainable, and there's quite a lot of people who really like it. First of all, let's weigh this thing. Oops. Turn it on. That helps. Okay. 3 pounds, 14.6 ounces. So just shy of 4 pounds of steel right there. Okay. Okay, let's take a look at the Vibroplex. this is the key. Now I've got the little, and this is actually Vibroplex branded. It's a little code practice oscillator that you can use for your testing. Now here's the thing about a Vibroplex, okay? We'll come down on this here. When you press it this way, it makes manual dashes. If you push it this way, it makes automatic dots. Okay, now there's lots of adjustments to get this thing right. So let's go down and look at what the elements are in this little magical piece of equipment. Now, Vibroplex is the oldest name in ham radio. It was formed over 100 years ago, and these were called speed keys. And they came with an odd plug, and the plug plugged right into the side of a regular key, so you didn't have to take the regular key off to use this. This thing transmits at about a minimum of 20 words per minute, okay? And there is an attachment for this right here that I picked up that will slow it down some more. We'll do another video on that. I've also got a lot of history on the guy who put this thing together, photographs. I've managed to track down 3 of his 4 patents. So I'd like to get the last one, and then we'll do a video about what led up to this Vibroplex. Now, they call this the original. It is most certainly not the very original key that the inventor put together on this. So when he put his first keyer together, the problem was this. He had to get this to stop absolutely as soon as you let up on it. Now I want you to notice this right here. The little kick, okay? This is a spring right in here. This piece of metal right here is a spring, okay? This right here is a mass, and it's kind of loose on this little, it's kind of loose on here. Now what happens is, and this is how they solved the problem, initially they used electromagnets. When you stopped, it would pull this over to the side and out of the way. And then you could continue to make dashes. The spring for the dash is right in there, okay? Now, he used electromagnets to grab that thing, but this is more elegant. We have a spring. In the spring, there are 3 reactive, well, there's 2 reactive and 1 resistive element. In electronics, the resistor is the resistive element. You put current through it, it dissipates heat. You've got a capacitive element, which tends to lead the current in a oscillating system, and you've got inductors, which tend to lag behind the current. The mechanical equivalent of capacitance is the spring. You put this in here, and it's got a mass over here. A mass is the equivalent of an inductor in electronics. That's mass. Okay, by the way, it's friction that is the equivalent of resistance. Friction, sometimes they use something called a dashpot. Nobody's ever heard of that, and everybody's heard of friction. Okay, notice that what this does is it hits that. This is reactance, it's springy. This is reactive, it's massy. Okay, and the two of them together come up to zero impedance. They're very carefully adjusted to be zero impedance. So when you do this and it hits that thing, notice that it doesn't continue on, but this thing pops up, okay? So it can take out that energy and match it exactly. Now, the spring is here. Now, when you press to make DAWs, this is the easy part of the system right here. There's a little contact right there. You make your DAWs manually. There's a spring adjustment there, spring adjustment there. All kinds of little things. Okay, so now here is the spring for the dots. Note that this has got a little bit of spring in it here, but that's just so that it will, after a while, it'll just make solid, but you can, there's no, let's see, 5 is 5 dots. Error is 8. Or sometimes just let it go for a while. It means an error. But otherwise, an H, okay, an I, an E, an S, that was an H. Okay, there was an S. So you've got this spring, and the damping action is for when the dashes stop, it just stops that thing dead. Because you see this little piece of mass right here, it comes right back down on this thing, stops it dead. This is an example of using reactances. I doubt that the inventor took this into account. Okay, over here is where the dashes are made. And you can make them as long as you want. And so you have to, in operating this, develop a swing so that you can make your dashes appropriately 3 times longer than the dits. Now, one of the problems that people had was the so-called Erie swing, where the dashes would not be much longer than the dits. And expert operators could decode that. Inexpert operators could not. So here we go. Da, dits. Notice always this at the end, popping out to absorb that energy and then come right back at this when it wants to swing again. And it just completely damps. This right here, this end here, is the genius of the Vibroplex, because his first systems used electromagnets and stuff to try to capture this thing so that when it was done vibrating, it didn't continue to vibrate. If you take this thing up like this, see what you can get, but with that, you're okay. Now, what these different adjustments are for, and they've got these screws that once you've made your adjustment, you want to screw this down so that it doesn't come loose. Okay, see how that's loose there? We'll just make that tight, and we'll just make that tight. All of these are adjustable. You have to, it's not like a paddle. Now, I learned to use a paddle. This is going to be a real challenge to me with the Vibroplex, learning how to use this. Now, on SKCC, it's okay to use this because it's mechanical. It's all mechanical. And it's going to take me a lot of practice to learn how to use this. This is a beautiful piece of machining. These things first started being sold, 100 or somewhat more than 100 years ago. The issue was telegraph arm, where your arm would become what they call glass arm. It would feel like it was going to break. And that was because of the up and down motion of a standard key like this. Okay. And you'd get carpal tunnel syndrome if you didn't do it right. The idea when using a straight key is to move all the way from the elbow and just rather than make the movement from the elbow, rather than make the movement from the wrist, you make it all the way from the elbow, and then you can transmit for a long time. I actually saw a Navy film about that, how to avoid that, how to send correctly with this. Normally, these were not used in the military for the very simple reason that they would send fast code, 30, 35 words a minute. So you had to have a sender who was good at it and a receiver who was good at it. So the military usually topped out at 25 words a minute, which is about as fast as you can do with a straight key. You can get, of course, I can only get to about 18 words a minute on the straight key. I think that's the fastest I ever got. Okay. These you can go very fast. So there you have it. That's quite a tour of a very fascinating mechanical device that for over 100 years has been part of the landline telegraphy, railroad telegraphy, radio telegraphy. You know, most of World War II was fought with J-38s, but if you were really, really good and you had an operator on the other end, you could go to the Vibroplex and up your speeds. The Vibroplex as designed will only do 20 words per minute and up. And so it takes a very skilled operator to use. But boy, back in the landline telegraph days and the railroad telegraph days, these were very special and highly prized keys. In fact, the operators would have their own, and they'd bring them into work in special cases and then take them home again. They didn't dare leave them out because they might not be there in the morning. So there you have it, a nice little review about Vibroplex. Remember, there's another video coming about the history of Vibroplex and the guy who put it together. So if you'd like to help support this channel financially, please do so. It helps keep the lights on. Also, you can go to dcasler.com/support, find a way that works for you. Please subscribe. That doesn't change anything for you, but it does change things for me because more people become interested if there are more subscribers. If you would like to get notified, then also click the bell. Now, it's always possible if you get tired of the notifications to unclick the bell, but leave yourself subscribed. And that way you look on the left on your YouTube page, I'll be listed there as one of the channels to which you've subscribed. So please click like, tell others about the channel, and until we next meet, 73.